and with all the rest of the speakers, but I I wanted to highlight the fact that effectively I agree that this decision has, I think, an important impact in so many ways that we cannot even foresee today. We will see in the future, right? But it goes from political to moral to world standing to etc. And this is something that will unfold in the coming days, and we will be able to maybe predict more concretely what the consequences are. I wanted uh, to bring to your attention the fact that, I mean, things that we all know, right? But that we should keep in mind when we talk and we discuss these things. The first thing is that these arrest warrants came after 6 months or more, even, right? And so that is a sign that should be explored in our minds. I mean, 6 months, why? Putin, it took a month to the court to decide on arrest warrants, right? Or even more. Lex, you may know better, right? And we know what was going on there, right? The court, like the ICJ, I think, in its own decisions, well, was not um, was not. I mean, I think the courts are afraid, right? And are afraid for good reasons. I mean, they know the dangers of making these decisions, and so we knew it with Bensouda before, but Karim Khan also, right, related to the public, the pressures that he was under at the time. I imagine that the court, the pre-trial court, must have been under such a pressure that explains, right, these 6 months of deliberations, evaluations, etc. So that gives us a context, right, in which the context in which these arrest warrants were issued. So um, I want to bring to your attention a series of questions, right, signs that need to be explored. The first is the question of, I mean, let's not fool ourselves. I mean, the first question for me is how was it possible that Karim Khan, a man that reached his position with the green light of the US and the UK precisely because he gave assurances to these countries of the contrary, that that would not happen, right? How is possible that him um, um, made this decision? How terrible and how evident from a legal point of view, right, are are these Israeli crimes that Hans saw no other alternative but to apply for the arrest warrants, right? I mean, I have in mind. I have in mind a very disrespectful metaphor for this, and I was thinking, do I say it or not? Because I don't want to be disrespectful to Karim Khan unnecessarily. Anyways, um, how terrible and evident Israeli crimes are that Hans saw no alternative to apply, even against his own convictions, I'm sure. Right? And also the pre-trial chamber. So no other way, no other alternative but to issue the warrants. Even though I can imagine they did not want this. They did not want to have this case in their hands, right? The court in their minds does not need this case. It's a court that is growing, is developing, is not completely established in a certain way, right? It's a new court and vulnerable court. Anyways, regarding their consequences, the consequences of the arrest warrants, well, I would say yes, there are moral, symbolic consequences, but the arrest warrants are not a symbolic or moral act, right? This is law. This is the law, and those who do not implement the arrest warrants should be judged accordingly. It's not that they are not fulfilling or not implementing a moral request. No, no, no. They are not implementing the same laws that they were there putting forward some years ago, right? And some of them signed and ratified and have defended so strongly in other cases, right? I will come back to that. So they are violating international legal obligations, and they should be put in front of these constantly. They are also debilitating, of course, the very international legal system that they brag so much about, right? And all of that to protect Israel. We already saw the reactions of the US and France. I mean, look at France. This is such a pirouette back, right, from their first declaration and this foolish explanation, because Patrick is completely right, right? I mean, there is no legal grounds for what they are saying. Um, Remember, I mean, the hypocrisy and the double standards are so evident, right? I mean, you remember Putin and Mongolia, right? The same French Minister of Foreign Affairs, when Putin went to Mongolia, said that all countries had an obligation, right, to implement the decision of the ICC, and that Putin should be arrested in Mongolia. That was some months ago, some months ago. So this is how do we interpret these things? I think politically and legally, it's important not to just mention them. These are signs that we need to explore. And for me, the sign, I mean, the French declaration is a sign of a very worrying situation, which is that for me, I see that truth is no longer a political factor. Yeah, right. I mean, truth is no longer a political factor. These guys have been telling us for 40 months that we are not seeing what we are actually seeing, right? This is their work, to convince us that we are not seeing what we are seeing. And how do we do politics? And how do we exercise our job, which is the law, in a world where truth is no longer a political factor? And don't dismiss it too easily, because it's not just. I mean, remember Trump in 2016, when he was asked whether the fact he talks about lockers, and you remember grabbing women and etc. And a journalist asks him, "Are you not afraid that you would lose votes because of that?" And he says, "Look, I could kill someone in downtown Manhattan and I would not lose a vote." And he's right, actually. He's right. Actually, we have now the evidence of that, right? He won the elections. Therefore, I finish with this. Therefore, the real effects of the arrest warrants, I think, need to be analyzed under, I'm sorry for this, under a concept I think that I didn't coin, but I work on in one of my publications, which is a concept of administration of violence. Because this is what we are seeing, is how powers, of course, states and in the UN are basically, rather than eradicating violence, which is a promise of the UN Charter, right? Eradicating violence at the global level, right? Rather than doing that, they are administering violence by legitimizing their own violence and criminalizing someone else's violence, right? And we see that also in the court, right? Matthias was referring to those crimes that the court did not even mention, but the ICJ decision on the illegality of the occupation also has very important flaws regarding that. The very fact that they never qualify the Israeli occupation as an act of aggression, for example,
Right.
which is it, which is, right? So, uh, so I think the concept of administration of violence is very useful in order to understand the dynamics that we are, and the case of France and the UK and others. I mean, somehow is evidence of that. And so I don't think any of them will arrest Netanyahu or any other Israeli. So what if someone else arrests them? One of the others, the other 124. Well, there we need to have in mind several things from the Hague Invasion Act, right, that has been actually resorted to in order to threaten at one point, to Senator Lindsey some days ago, right, saying that if you dare to help the ICC in the implementation of these arrest warrants, I mean, we will target you and we will crash your economy. So the question, and they have done it. I come from a country, Chile, where they did it, right? And they have done it so in
Oh,
so many other places. So what if a small country like Chile or others, right, arrest one of them? What can we expect? The crushing of their economy, and considering that, do you think that any of them will dare to do so? So, so
okay.
finally, finally, I would say that we need. I think our work at the ICC is done, is going on. It's good. We have to keep it up. And now, really, we need to concentrate also on national courts and several forms of universal jurisdiction.